Hello and welcome to Caffeine Entertainment. I'm your host Mental9R and this is our tech series video number 10. In today's video we're going to be looking at the reveal of the PlayStation 5 Pro and going over that in a live reaction. This is pre-recorded obviously, but that's what we're doing. Apologies up front, there's a bit of an echo at the start of the video. It's kind of there all the way through whenever I speak, and it's maybe not as bad near the end, I hope. But anyway, apologies for that up front. Let's get on with the show.
Hi, I'm Mark Cerny. I'm excited to be here to talk about the newest addition to our console lineup, PlayStation 5 Pro, and how it advances gaming technology.
This is it.
But first, I want
See
to
what
take
they
just a minute
got
to look
for
at what we put
us.
in the original PlayStation 5 and how it delivers an exceptional gaming experience.
Hopefully the recording isn't too loud. I'm also hearing an echo. I don't know why that is.
In 2020, it brought a lot to the table. 8 Zen 2 CPU cores form the brains of PlayStation 5 and enable high-speed complex gameplay, with character counts reaching into the hundreds.
PS5 Pro.
As high as 120 frames a second. PS5 has a powerful RDNA 2 GPU, which can render anything from intricate details to fantastic
RDNA 2.
vast panoramas to explore.
Of course, we already know it wasn't full RDNA 2, but that's okay.
Off of water or glass. And the realism that comes
It's not like that did Xbox any favors.
A custom SSD can load data at breathtaking speed, resulting in ultra-fast transitions between game worlds.
Also works on a hard drive.
Universal speeds are essentially unlimited.
It's funny they're still pushing the SSD thing, considering
Audio tech brings an unparalleled sense of
Rift Apart plays perfectly fine on a micro SD card in my Steam Deck.
You may not even need to see the enemies to know exactly where they are. Finally, the DualSense controller has haptics that let you feel through your hands what your character is experiencing inside of the game. It's wonderful to see such variety and richness
Church
in
lady.
experiences. Creators have made amazing use of the hardware capabilities, but when I talk to them, I do hear about their desire for more graphics performance. The dreams of the developers are bigger than can be supported at 60 frames per second, and that leads to an aspect of modern gaming that we're all familiar with: graphics modes. It can be a difficult choice for players. Fidelity modes emphasize the visuals, typically through higher resolution rendering. These modes might also have enhanced detail or use more ray tracing. But the games only run at 30 frames per second. The visuals can be choppier and the controls less responsive. Performance modes emphasize frame rate and interactivity, typically choosing to run at 60 frames per second, mainly by reducing the graphical detail until those frame rates can be achieved. When asked to decide on a mode, players are choosing performance about 3/4 of the time. Removing that decision, or at least narrowing that divide, is one of the key targets for PlayStation 5 Pro. We want to give players the graphics that the game creators aspire to, at the high frame rates that players typically prefer. To do that, PS5 Pro substantially improves over PlayStation 5 in 3 ways. Here's what we call the Big 3. First, we made the GPU much larger and increased the speed of the memory it uses. The result is rendering that's up to 45% faster. Second, we made major upgrades to the ray tracing, taking a streamlined and accelerated approach that allows calculation of the rays at double or even triple the speeds of PlayStation 5. And finally, we added custom hardware for machine learning and an AI library called PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PSSR for short. PSSR analyzes the game images pixel by pixel and can add an extraordinary amount of detail, which boosts the effective resolution of the games. Game creators are adding PS5 Pro support to new and existing titles, and with the Big 3 involved, the results can be pretty amazing, with graphics showing something like fidelity levels of detail, but at double the frame rate. Here's The Last of Us Part 2 running on PS5 Pro. It has huge amounts of detail and targets a super smooth 60 frames per second. Let's compare this to the Fidelity mode on PS5, which is only running at 30 frames per second and is therefore much choppier. This goal of delivering almost Fidelity-like graphics at performance frame rates has been achieved for a broad set of titles, including Marvel's Spider-Man,
Almost Fidelity-like.
and Ratchet & Clank.
Almost.
We can see that PS5 Pro is close to doubling the power of PlayStation 5. Another way to compare the two consoles is to look at PS5 Pro versus Performance mode on PS5, both of which target 60 frames per second. What we see here is a difference in detail. PS5 Pro is much sharper and crisper than PS5.
Is indeed.
For this, my favorite is the parade scene from Ratchet & Clank. Distant details are much clearer. And here we can see Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is noticeably higher resolution throughout the scene, including the trees and procedural cars. So overall, some remarkable...
I just don't think most gamers will notice.
Increased sharpness to the graphics, or smoother and more...
When you're actually playing the game,
This is the big three showing their value.
we'll see.
As you've been seeing, machine learning via the PSSR library is being used quite broadly to add pixel detail and boost...
Of course, we're losing detail because of YouTube compression and all that stuff, so. But it was noticeable, without a doubt.
For Horizon Forbidden West. Apart from the detail boost, that extra graphics power is allowing for improvements to lighting and visual effects.
So now you can be bored in higher fidelity. Yay!
As well as to the hair and the skin in cinematics.
Open up, guys.
Yeah, I loved Horizon Zero Dawn on PS4. I just could not get into Forbidden West. I don't know.
Particularly when the games are focused
I'll
on
have to try it again one day.
The faster hardware in PS5 Pro can make a real difference. Allowing Gran Turismo 7 to add ray-traced reflections between the cars in gameplay, while continuing to support their targeted 60 frames per second.
See, I drive in cockpit mode. I honestly, I don't care on that type of game.
Allowing not only for better reflection,
No, that looked
a greater
good.
variety of reflective surfaces, but also for further realism.
This was a great game.
Of shadows.
I did play it on PC
I hope
though.
you've enjoyed this run-through of the technology behind PlayStation 5 Pro. Simply put, it's the most powerful console we've ever built, and a worthy addition to the PS5 family. Let me wrap this up by giving you a quick look at a number of games running on the new console.
It's short. Well, the vents on the side make it faster by default. I wonder how big it is. I wish they put it beside the Slim or something so you could tell the difference. Not gonna lie, like I'm all for better hardware on a regular basis. It's disappointing Xbox is doing what they're doing, which is nothing. But I wonder how Forza's gonna look on it. Yeah, that was a cheap shot. Well, now just tell us when it's coming so people will know. And vertical stands sold separately. Oh boy. $6.99 without the disc drive, I'm assuming that is. Wow. Okay, so there we have it. I have taken a little bit of time to think about this one. And the more I think about it, the more it really comes down to this price. It's not a bad piece of hardware. It's the price that is the massive problem. If we look back at the previous gen, being PlayStation 4, the PS4 Pro came out and launched at the same price that the PS4 launched at. That was 3 years later. This is 4 years later, and by the time you add in a vertical stand, and by the time you add in the disc drive, two things that came with the launch PS5, the disc version at $500 USD. Add those two items in and you're looking at $810 US. So with the US price of $699 for the console, in Canada, that's likely going to translate to at least $899, and probably more than likely, it'll be $929. Knowing PlayStation, they were more than willing to charge $629, even though the Xbox Series X was $599 in Canada at launch. They've since raised the price to $649, and Xbox has matched that with the Series X at $649 as well. So if we go with an assumed price of somewhere, we'll say $900 just for easy figuring, Then you add in the price of $40 for a vertical stand, and you add in the price of $100 for that disk drive, and you're over $1,000 just for the console to get the same thing as far as equipment that you got for that $629 launch price of the PS5. It's astronomical. It's completely insane. So I really do, and I say this with all sincerity, I hope these things rot on store shelves and no one buys them. So the good news in this, if there is any good news, or maybe this is a bright side, it seems that most people, including PlayStation fanboys, are not fans of the pricing structure of this console. Just to prove that point, I'm just going to jump quickly back to the presentation, and you can see the dislike ratio is almost double that to the like ratio. Likewise, the comments in general are very much negative. I think you'd have a hard time finding too many that say positive things about it. It's really unfortunate that this is the direction that the gaming industry is going. There's a lot more I could say about this, but just in terms of a quick summary, this is largely just due to a lack of competition. Now you might be thinking, but Xbox is out there, they're competing. In reality, they're not. I'm equating this to a very similar thing that's going on in the PC world right now with GPUs. In the GPU side of the computer industry, there's no real competition. Why is that? Well, NVIDIA has such a massive market share advantage over AMD that AMD's kind of just given up on competing in a price to performance way that they used to. They haven't really set aggressive pricing since the RX 480 was introduced. Ever since then, starting with the RX 5700, they've simply just picked a price that's kind of in between what NVIDIA is doing. They've let NVIDIA go out, set the initial price structure, and rather than coming in aggressive, they're just slotting the cards in between. So you have this performance jump that's kind of just flipping back and forth on the GPU side of the house, and you pay accordingly. So when NVIDIA goes out and sets a really high price for a card, AMD just kind of comes along and tries to undercut them a little bit if the performance is very similar. If the performance is a little better, maybe they price it at the same price. And now you're seeing in consoles, because PlayStation has a similar kind of advantage, especially in European countries. Anywhere outside of North America, I mean, Xbox isn't really even a thought anymore. And Microsoft is just completely uninterested in going out and competing. If they were really competing on the hardware front, you would have seen prices come down by now. But Microsoft's content where they're at. They don't care about selling consoles, so they've left their prices stagnant. And what's happened is Sony's looked at that. In fact, Microsoft even increased the price of the Series X by $100 for the 2TB version that's coming out. And again, no need for that. NAND prices have fallen dramatically since the launch of these things 4 years ago. So all that PlayStation's done, they've looked at that and gone, oh geez, we've got a more powerful console now. We're going to price it up here, and you're just going to have to pay for it. Whether or not you do pay for it, well, that's entirely up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your money. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with the hardware. It's really just the price. And by the time you add in that vertical stand and the disk drive, especially here in Canada, $1,100 for a console is really tough for me to justify. I can think of scenarios or ways that maybe you could bring that price down, and then maybe it does make sense under the right circumstances. But I, for one, I'm not going to trade in my limited edition Spider-Man PS5. That's a console I want to keep. And I do believe that the more people that buy it, it just reaffirms this new price point. And it's only going to encourage Sony, and Microsoft for that matter, to charge us more in the future. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about it. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much for joining me. And contrary to what many people might think, the vast majority of the people that watch my videos do not actually subscribe to the channel. So if you like this and you want to see more of it, please subscribe. It lets me know I'm doing the right things. Leave a like, comment, share it out with your friends even. That would be awesome. Thanks so much for joining me once again. I'm Mental 9R. This is Caffeine Entertainment. It's time to wake up and play some games.